Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, and I'm again today joined by the wonderful and really invigorating Elise Peck. And today we're talking about transcending toxic relationship cycles. Welcome back, Elise.
Thanks, Magic. Thank you so much for having me back.
My pleasure. Now, earlier in the podcast season, we were talking about sexual energy. And in episode 47, we talked about polarity. Today, we're talking about transcending toxic relationship cycles. Now, when you mentioned this to me, my ears pricked up because I was the authority on how to attract a toxic relationship. We've talked about narcissists and cortisol weight and all that sort of thing in episode 47. When you become addicted to a toxic relationship cycle, those narcissists, they seem to just track you down, don't they?
Yes. They almost identify you, see you on, it depends on your beliefs, but for me, it feels like almost on an energetic level. It's almost like they can feel when your energy field is open for a feeding. It's almost like once they've depleted you, they kind of disappear for a little bit, and then once you're feeling good again, it's like energetically they come right on back in. It's like they can energetically feel it, but then also on a physical level, it's almost like they can identify in your face your personality type and whether you're going to comply with what be a supply for them. And I've referred to it in episode 47, but there's this book, Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendricks and Helen McCallie Hunt, two renowned relationship psychologists. I don't 100% remember their qualifications, but yeah, very, renowned. And they talk about how in relationship we actually attract in the imago, the image of kind of all the relationships that have gone before us that have left an imprint on us. And we can, just by looking at someone, we can just pick up on a deep unconscious level a lot about them. We'll be like, they just feel like home. They just feel familiar. They just feel... And so if we have had narcissistic relationships and it's familiar to us, we'll be attracted to them. And for a narcissist, if they've routinely found codependent people in their life that will feed their needs, they by the same token have that ability to recognize that in another. They can just look at each other and the familiarity, they know. So this is cluster B, right? 5% of the population doesn't have empathy. They're what's called cluster B. And in that cluster, you've got narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, and real, sociopaths and psychopaths, and to some degree narcissists have honed over life, because often they've got a very traumatic past. They've honed the ability to really read people's faces, to really almost read their mind. They did this as a survival thing, and now they can use it as a manipulation thing. Maybe initially to survive, they had to manipulate their parents. So they learnt, because you can naturally, people teach face reading now. You can learn face reading. And when you go to learn face reading, they say, we naturally do this as kids. Kids have an intuitive ability. And that's why, you hear, oh, my child knows exactly how much to push my buttons and then knows exactly right where the limit is. Children, they have this ability to watch and look at your face. And, if they're in a dangerous environment, that will get heightened. their brain will go hypervigilant and they'll become an expert at this, right? And so generally both codependents and narcissists, or some people call that an empath or highly sensitive person. But the codependent is reading people's faces to appease them, to make sure to not upset them, to stay safe. The narcissist is, or the sociopath or psychopath is reading someone's face to manipulate them, to get what they want, to get something out of them, to feed them in some way. Whereas the codependent is just like, I just want to be safe. And they sort of find each other and they can interact on this intense level and they can recognize each other because other people just literally, it's like water off a duck's back. They don't have this hypervigilance. They're not picking up everyone's expressions so much. They wouldn't even notice half the stuff a narcissist is doing because they're kind of oblivious because they haven't got this hypervigilance. So that's sort of how they find each other and reflect back to each other exactly where they need to heal. But really the ultimate healing journey with the narcissist or cluster B is to let go, because the codependent can heal, the empath can heal, but the narcissist generally part of the thing is they don't have empathy, they don't care to heal, they don't care if they're hurting anyone, and they have they've got no motivation to ever change. So they generally won't change. They'll just find the next person. So the journey for us is to find a way to let that go, to find what in us is attracted to that and to heal that so that we stop finding that attractive.
Now, when we talk toxic relationship cycles, that can often happen with ourselves. So it obviously affects our health. How do you talk to your clients about breaking the toxic relationship cycle with themselves?
That's such an interesting question. Yeah, well, the toxic relationship with themselves is generally always reflected in how they are relating to anyone else, or how they're relating to food, or how they're relating to life. Everything is relationships. Relationships, the tools that actually reflect back to us where we need to grow. They're the mirrors, and we really need them. And so it's really the indicator of where they're in a toxic relationship is where they're self-abandoning in relationships, where they're accepting a relationship or treatment that if their friend told them they thought would be crazy, but because they're so hooked in. So addictive relationships happen because someone figures out how to give you a feeling, or accidentally or on purpose, they can give you a feeling that you think you can't get anywhere else, right? And so it almost is basically like a heroin addiction. You feel like you can get this high, this feeling. And like heroin addicts neglect everything else in their pursuit of this feeling, people become like this with other people. They get such an incredible feeling that they're willing to let go of their basic needs, their basic boundaries, anything else. And when this person says jump, they'll, I have people that say they're in relationships where the guy's like, we'll see them, and then straight after we'll just block their number and they can't get through to them. And then we'll email from time to time saying you're only allowed to contact me on email. And it's like just sketchy stuff. Whereas if you told a friend, oh, he comes around, he sleeps with me, and then he blocks my number, and then you'd be like, whoa, like why? Why are you in this? But we can't understand it unless we're caught in the addiction ourselves. So these addictive relationships cause people to self-abandon, and it's really through watching how people relate to food, relate to life, relate to the workplace, relate to other people, that we can really identify where there is a wound or a trauma online. And then I take them, we go into that, we go into the feeling. There's a variety of things we can do, lots of stuff. And to go back to what is going on in that is creating that story. But also one of the most important things that we do is I say to the clients, understand any feeling that you feel with anybody else actually literally is coming from within you. Any feeling you ever feel is literally in you. Someone is triggering it in you, but it's in you, it's yours, which means your body can do that, which means you can feel that feeling on your own without another. They're just reflecting to you where that feeling exists in you, but it exists in you. That feeling is not coming from anywhere but in you. And our journey is to self-source that feeling. Until a person can self-partner and self-source that feeling, they will be addicted, because they will want that feeling so bad, because they need that feeling and they haven't figured out how to source it within yet. They're outsourcing their power to someone else, and they're seeing someone else as a source to themselves. And until they source that within, which we go on a journey to get them to do this, until they source that within, they will be at the whim of anyone who ever shows up and is able to give them that feeling. And that's frankly, it's really dangerous. And so, yeah, that's the key, is where are you looking outside of yourself for feelings? Let's heal what's going on in there, and then let's get you so healed that you're sourcing that from within. Because when you can source feelings from within, you're not that thrown if someone else can also give you that feeling. It's like right now I feel happy. If someone tells me a joke, I'm going to be like, oh, and I'll laugh and I'll feel great. But I'm not going to be like, I want more jokes, because if I was depressed and someone got me to laugh, I'd be like, come back, do that again. But if I'm happy and someone gets me to laugh, I'm like, that was nice. And I'm not going to be as attached to it, because I can make myself laugh in the next minute. And so, yeah, they're reflecting back to us, where do we need to heal within, get that feeling within, and where are we giving away our power by believing that someone outside of us needs to be a source of that feeling?
Totally. Now, we talk about wealth here being spiritual, financial, physical. You can have so many types of wealth, but there's relationship wealth as well. How would you sum up relationship wealth?
I love the word abundance. So relationship wealth, relationship abundance, if I can just sneak the word abundance in there. Find what you hate, turn it around, find what you'd like to see the opposite of, and then promote that. As in, promote what you love instead of bash what you hate. So I've done a bit of bashing of the addictive relationships today. And really we should be talking about what is an abundant relationship. It's where two people want to grow. They want to get better within themselves. They want to learn to unconditionally love. They feel remorse when they've hurt the other, and they want to repair and they want to make it better. They consistently show up for each other. They are reliable. They feel safe in each other's company. They play. There's fun. There is trust. There is undeniable trust, both people. The communication is clear, direct, respectful. It comes from a place of personal responsibility. So each person takes personal responsibility for their own well-being. And then each person is committed to nurturing what is called the space between. So in any relationship, there's three entities. There's the two people, and then there's the space between. And it's mostly about both people taking responsibility for their own well-being and then nurturing the space between. That means repairing ruptures. That means putting in what the Gottman Institute calls goodwill deposits. So a relationship is strong if every negative interaction is buffered by at least 5 positive. It's called the golden ratio. And so to do that, you need to be watering the space between by building up constantly positive interactions, so that when you have the challenging interactions where there is naturally always conflict, that it's no big deal, because you've got so much goodwill in the bank with each other. It is being aware of and getting rid of what Gottman Institute calls the 4 horsemen. So not having any criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness. Those are the 4 horsemen that kill relationships. So a relationship without that, a relationship that is actively working on getting rid of that, and a relationship that is actively, repairs when someone does slip, and that does happen. And, I like to say a relationship is like a plant. You need to water it. We've talked about watering the space between with appreciation, with love, with trust, with direct communication. Learning how to communicate, learning how to communicate through conflict is very important. And pulling out the weeds. You've got to water the plant, love the plant. You've got to pull out the weeds. You've got to clear the space between. a lot of couples have sexual issues or aren't orgasmic or this sort of stuff because the space between has got so murky. So much stuff is built up and they haven't cleared it by just having the proper conversations around it to hold space for each other, validate each other, empathize for each other. There's an incredible process that very simple, that any issue you have, you can do this back and forth protocol, which teaches you how to hold space for each other appropriately. And each person gets their turn, and you just get to clear the space between, and each person feels heard, each person feels validated. You don't have to agree with each other, you just need to hear the other, help them feel seen and heard. And that cleans the murk and the mud between the couples. So there's actually a lot that goes into an abundant relationship. It feels like safety, it feels like trust, it feels like abundance, it feels warm, it feels like appreciation. You just feel this intense gratitude washing through your body. And Abraham Hicks and people that work in the space of energetics around abundance say the most like abundant thing you can feel is kind of appreciation. And when you have a relationship that's working really well, you feel like tears of gratitude for how lucky you are, and that is abundance in itself. Abundance is really like gratitude. And it's the same with wealth. Like what you appreciate appreciates. The more you realize what you already have, the more wealthy and abundant you feel. And it's really all about a feeling. The reason we want more money, the reason we want more love is because we think we're going to feel a certain way when we get it. So abundance is really just feeling abundant. Wealth is just feeling wealthy. It's just feeling abundant. And that mostly comes from just being in an intense state of gratitude very often.
So, Elise, the key to transcending toxic relationships would be to seek abundant relationships, to sum it up.
Yes, to seek an abundant relationship with yourself and an abundant relationship with others. Yes, to get very familiar, to make the unfamiliar familiar. So that nice guy that you think is boring, here's the thing. If you are in a cycle of toxic relationships, you're going to find healthy love really boring and strange at first. You'll find it weird that the man or the woman is consistent, is reliable. It'll seem too easy, and that won't be attractive because your familiar pattern is it being hard, it being a challenge, and you'll be addicted to the challenge, addicted to the chaos, and you'll feel like something is just off because there's not highs and lows. It'll feel off, it'll feel dull, it'll feel boring. And the key is whenever you're feeling bored and it's not enough, to kind of find a great coach or healing tools that go within, like what within me is attached to the chaos, and move it out. Prioritize yourself enough to know you deserve and are worthy of steady, stable, easy love. It feels easy. There is conflict and whatever, but when you're around them, you feel relaxed. When you're away from them, you feel relaxed. You're not panicking when you're away from them. Am I going to hear what's happened? They drop off the face of the earth, or are they going to leave? You're not panicking when you're with them. When you're with them, you feel better about yourself, not worse. When you're away from them, you feel good within yourself, not worse. If you've only had toxic relationships, it seems too crazy how easy a healthy one is that you'll almost self-sabotage to get back to the familiar. So it's being aware that if you're bored, this is probably a great indicator that this is healthy love, and secure attachment is actually the real path to freedom. And this is a thing that you want to make familiar just by leaning more into it, allowing it, watching it, and watching what within you is seeking more drama and going within and healing that. But real love feels very stable and secure, and it doesn't have addiction in it. And so it's about when you feel the need for that addictive high and low, the drama, go within and like, what within me is needing this. Whenever you feel bored with your partner and you feel like they're not enough, that's really a sign that you don't feel enough and that there's something going on in you, and you need to go in and do some inner work around that. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a complex process, and which is why working with a coach is really very helpful to help you identify where maybe you're self-sabotaging, where you're getting bored, where you're like, I had to say to a client, this guy sounds amazing, this guy sounds great. And she was like, I don't know, and getting, because at the start, it doesn't feel like fireworks with healthy love. It doesn't, it feels calm. It's like a calm curiosity. It's like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's how you ought to be. You ought to be not sure about letting someone in your life. If you feel addictively like, oh my God, this person's amazing, I'll let them in right now, addiction has been activated. You're infatuated. You put them up on a pedestal. You're not realizing that they're just a human like everyone else. Like, you need them. And whereas real love is just like, I don't know, I'll see. Let's just see what happens. It's calm, it's slow, and the intimacy builds over time as you get to know each other, which is how it ought to work. And now she's like, oh my gosh, he is like my dream guy. He is this. And I could see it at the start because I've seen how the toxic works, how the healthy works. And when she was telling me about, when she was like this guy, I was like thinking to myself, oh, he's a winner. But she couldn't see it at the start. And now she's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this relationship. And so, just know it'll feel unfamiliar, but if you want new results, you need to start working on making the unfamiliar familiar and healing the patterns that are getting you the current results. And knowing that boring is often a really good sign of safety, neutrality. And if you really need, the highs and lows and whatever, first do a bit of healing, but then find other ways. Go dancing, go find the things that give you amazing highs in other ways. Go on roller coasters, go find things that give you a thrill. Go skydiving, find the things that give you a thrill. But it's so important for your health that you don't find the roller coaster within your actual love relationship, because there's a Harvard Grant and Gluick study that said that the quality of your life is basically determined by the quality of your relationships, that happiness actually comes from relationship fulfillment. Secure attachment feels like freedom, and there's kind of nothing better for your health than secure attachment. And those roller coasters and addictive cycles aren't good for your health. They're spiking your hormones all over the place. They're giving you anxiety. It's addictive, but just like cigarettes are addictive, alcohol's addictive. Well, not to everyone, but drugs are addictive. Like, yeah, it feels good when you're in the addiction, but it's not actually good for your whole health, and it distracts you from what you truly value, and it distracts you from really valuing yourself, and your health will suffer.
Now, relationship cycles and how we choose partners can often reflect what's going on within ourselves. We've talked about this a lot today. So looking back at people's shadow values. Now, just to remind the listeners that in episode 24, I discussed shadow values, and throughout this podcast, in many episodes, a lot of the coaches will discuss shadow values with you as well. When we look at feeding shadow values, be it in a positive way or a negative way, that can drive how we choose our relationships, how we nurture our relationships. But when you're feeding a shadow value in a negative way, you're feeding through what's called secondary gain. So you need to look at yourself in a toxic relationship cycle as, what is the secondary gain that you are getting from that? Elise, as a coach, what are the main secondary gains that you see your clients are getting to feed those toxic relationship cycles?
Control, superiority. When you have someone more on the narcissistic that wants to dominate another rather than being equal with another, generally they don't really have much shadow requirement for belonging. They don't really care. They are out for control, and they're out for, this is the toxic person. They're out for control, and they're out to feel a feeling of superiority where they overpower this person, and a feeling of feeling really smart, that they are almost smarter than this person, that they can dominate. The other person generally is looking, the shadows that they're getting are being the center of attention. So the person will manipulate. The reason you're in it is because there's a positive part. So the positive, they feed your shadow, they feed your addiction in the positive part. They give you everything you think you want, and then they take it away as the punishment. Then they come back and take it, and it's just this cycle. So the thing that gets you addicted is the positive. The positive is because they're so manipulative, they make you feel so seen and so special because they can see you so deeply. So you get to feel the center of attention. You get to feel, I guess, superior as well, that like in someone's eyes, they see how special and unique you are. That's how they make you feel. You get to feel deep belonging, because often these toxic people, when they're being the addictive cycle, they're not being themselves. They're just mirroring back you to you. They find out what you really like and then they mirror it back to you. And so you get this intense feeling of belonging because you feel so connected to this person, because they feel like another you. Oh my gosh, I never met someone that's so similar, that thinks the same way as me. And it's because these people are masters at manipulation, and they know how to find what you really want and mirror it back to you. And that feeds your feeling of belonging, of being the center of attention. Yeah. And also sexuality. Sexuality is, a lot of these people will use sexual feelings. So I've actually been in a situation where I've been hypnotized to orgasm by someone trying to exert power and influence over me. And so they figured out that I'm like really into sexual energy. There's a program, it's called Mindvana. There might be various where you can hypnotize someone to orgasm and do it without them knowing, in a covert way. So they just think they're talking to you, and then suddenly their body starts orgasming and they think, oh, who are you? Like for me, when it happened, I thought, like, the body is the messenger. You've got to listen to your body. My body's orgasming at this person. This must be a clear sign. I didn't know that this person actually was purposely targeting me and doing things to make that happen, to give that very result of me thinking that they were special, to give that very result of me thinking that my body had a special connection to them. And so the sexuality shadow, if you're not sourcing your own sexual satisfaction, within, then if someone else can make you feel those feelings, then you will become addicted to that if you don't have that, if you're not self-sourcing that. So yeah. And of course, wealth. My goodness, such a biggie. So many cluster B people have made a lot of money because they're just great at playing the game of life. And because they don't have empathy, and then because they have a sense of grandiosity and a sense of entitlement, and this is part of the cluster B psyche. Like, a narcissist is naturally going to make money because they don't have much of a conscience. They'll just do what it takes, and they want power, and they're driven by their shadows for power and control, so they'll go after it, and they'll make it happen because they're addicted to their success. What will often happen is someone will see them with all this money, and that will be an alluring thing, and they'll think, I'll be more secure with this person. And so wealth can also be a shadow. And so often you'll see some people get with someone just because they're wealthy, but that wealthy person actually just uses it to exert, like, it's financial abuse, right? Financial abuse is a real thing. You can financially abuse someone by kind of controlling their money. So it can be the shadow of wealth, thinking that when I'm with this wealthy person, it'll fix all my problems, and they kind of let you believe that, and then you get in there and they're so smart, they know how to protect their wealth. They'll drip feed you out an allowance, they'll take it back, they'll stop. You think you're going to go and it's going to be abundant, and then when you're in, you realize, I'm just a puppet now because I am helpless to this person. And and often really serious cases of this, these people know how to kind of get you to cut off, like, a lot of your support network, and you end up just completely dependent on them financially, and they'll use that to control. So all the shadows come into play. And that's why some people say you can't heal your shadow. I don't believe that. I have healed mine by self-sourcing it. So I guess that is feeding my shadow. I do feed your shadow, but you can also fully, like, if you're someone that really needs a lot of control, I believe, I used to be like that. I've healed that. I don't need that anymore. I don't need to feed it. I literally just had to release a lot of the stuff that was making me feel so unsafe in the world, that was making me feel like I needed to have control. Once I released a lot of the lack of safety, and once I also rewired that actually letting go and being in the flow of life means life loves and supports me, and that makes me safe, I could fully let go of control. And so I went from someone that had the shadow of control years ago, to the point where when I was 15, I had anorexia. I starved myself to control my mom. That was the shadow that I was using. And I don't have that shadow anymore. So I fully believe that you can fully heal. You can fully self-parent, self-partner, self-heal, self-source, where the shadows you don't need to feed them. They're not ruling you anymore. And that's ultimately a great pathway to great relationships. Yeah. Yeah.
The shadows can feed you and rule you in a positive way. So, or rather, you can feed them in a positive way. So, as you were saying with control, if you are in control of your own emotions, if you're in control of your own self-care, you're still driving that shadow, but in a really positive way that can really only open you up. And that's really letting go of that need for that secondary gain.
It's a good midway point. It's good for a time. It's great at the start of a coaching relationship to use people as shadow. Ultimately, though, if you release all the stuff that is making you emotionally volatile, you don't need to control your emotions anymore. You're literally neutral. You're not triggered. So I used to, when I was, did all this attachment parenting, and early in my journey, my control was still very much online, and I wanted to control the outcome for my children's future, and I wanted a better start for them. So I forced myself to never react in a volatile way when they had emotions, but I still felt it within. And guess what? Their brain actually mirrors our brain. So no matter what I was suppressing because I wanted to control, the whole brainchild, Dan Siegel, says that our child's brain will just mirror ours. So they pick up, even if you're suppressing. So yes, if I used my shadow, and I was, to control my emotions, that was better than being volatile. But a step better than that was actually going in, and every time I felt a charge, releasing it, neutralizing it, and getting to the point where I didn't have to even suppress anymore. I didn't have to control anymore. I literally did not feel triggered anymore. And so the shadows is a midway point. You can hook onto them. You can take them from ruling your life to supercharging your life. And then ultimately you can heal them and come back to kind of being this whole person that they're fully integrated, and they're not even there anymore, because you belong to yourself. So you've got no need of belonging. You feel safe in the world. So you've got rid of any kind of desire for control, you've let go. Yeah, you can. It's a bit of a journey of enlightenment, and it requires kind of becoming your own inner parent, self-partnering. But I think that's ultimately the goal.
Totally. And when you are in alignment and you've got all of those shadow values nailed, it takes you to your golden values. And back in episode 46, I discussed with the listeners what golden values are, and, really doing what lights you up, but from within. Elise, this has been a great conversation. Thank you again for joining us. Now, we do love to offer freebies to the listeners. So what can you offer the listeners today?
Well, I've got a really juicy thing I can offer, actually. I created a while ago this 9-page document. It's a PDF, but it's basically an ebook. And it's pretty much your step-by-step guide on your dream relationship strategy. So whether you're in relationship or not, it's the dream relationship strategy. It's this incredible, phenomenal, powerful step-by-step guide. And I initially was going to use it as a chapter in a book, but I now give it away as a freebie. So that is something that I am willing to offer your listeners. So they can email me at Elise Peck, ELISE Peck, PECK @gmail.com, or they can find me. I mostly hang out on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at Elise, ELISE Peck, PECK _coach, COACH, on Instagram, and they can just private message me there. I'm on Instagram a lot, and I do a lot of live videos. I give away a lot of content, a lot of relationship tips, I give a lot of value over on my Instagram.
Thank you again so much for coming on, Elise Peck. That was your episode 48, Transcending Toxic Relationship Cycles. In episode 49, I will be talking to you about resolutions or realizations. So I look forward to seeing you then. But for now, go forth and create your magical life.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.